partly because of the mythology of the Bootstraps
Yeah.
and meritocracy, but also there's a great Martin Luther King quote. He used to be a UBI advocate. The last couple of years, he was pushing it hard, and then we lost him. He was assassinated, and we lost all the... But he said, what was his quote? He said, "It is a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to pick himself up by his bootstraps."
Yeah, because... And today most shoes don't have any type of strap to pull them on with.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here talking with Conrad Shaw of Pale Blue Dot.
Pale Blue Dot Media.
Media. Here. I am so brain dead. That is my through line today, ladies and gentlemen. And he is the producer of Bootstraps, which is a documentary series. And I'm going to let Conrad talk a bit do all the talking on this one because he knows more about it than I do because he's the producer of this series. How many? Well, first of all, talk a bit about what is the concept that is behind Bootstraps.
Okay. To start with, it's my partner and I started it. Her name's Dea Schlossberg. She's directing, and I'm producing it with her. And the team has grown as the project has grown. So she was looking for a new documentary project, and we were looking for something that told human stories, encompassed human rights. We were looking at a lot of different ideas, and we came across this idea of universal basic income, and quickly realized it was it offered a lens into every problem through a lens of or every issue through a lens of what would it look like in a world with universal basic income. For those that don't know, universal basic income is basically saying that no one starts at zero, that everyone gets a cash check from the government unconditionally, universally. That's the same amount. It's like a dividend. It's like your right as a citizen. So that would look like something like $1,000 a month is one policy proposal that people have. And so for our project, we wanted to, instead of debating it intellectually, we wanted to just show what a world of universal basic income might look like. There are various trials and pilots of UBI, they call it, around the world. They're all set up to be very scientifically rigorous and like 1,000 people, random trial and statistically measured. We wanted to tell human stories and do a qualitative analysis rather than quantitative. And so we created, with Netroots is our fiscal sponsor, we created a UBI experiment in America that spans 10 different states, has 20 people that are receiving $1,000 a month per adult and $333 a month per kid for 2 years. And what we're simply doing is there's no strings attached, and they do whatever they want with it, and we check in on them and film their stories, and that's what we'll share.
Oh, cool. So it's a series, so will you be traveling worldwide for the series or just within the United States?
It's within the United States. It's from, as far west as western Montana and as far east as, eastern North Carolina.
For just talking about, I'm going to use a theatrical phrase, casting. Was there a specific criteria that was used to select the families for this?
Yes. For one thing, we wanted to get a wide range of topics and stories and types of people and regions. So we casted from homeless all the way up to solidly middle class. To include someone wealthy would have been disingenuous, because when you talk about really, if you're gonna fund the UBI, eventually there's going to be some people at the top that are paying more back than they're getting in UBI.
Yeah. So
we wanted to see what it looked like for the bulk of Americans, upper middle class and on down. And we wanted every person watching to be able to relate to one or two or three of the stories, and also maybe judge some of them. So we covered issues from trans rights, indigenous rights, homelessness, middle class suburban family lifestyle, racism. We like dealing with medical conditions. Hurricane, evacuation and recovery. And we wanted to just use On the surface, really, Bootstraps isn't about UBI, Universal Basic Income, so much as it's about all of these stories through a lens of what they'd look like with UBI. So we don't talk about UBI that much in it. We just show the lives of the people who are receiving it.
How long? This is going to be more of probably like a technical talk, because since you said this is currently in pre-production.
No, it's in production.
It's in production?
We've had people on their basic income trial for a year to a year and 9 months. So we have the whole first year, which is what we intend to be in the first season. We have that in the can, and we're starting to edit. And
because you've had a screening.
Yeah, we showed some footage here at Netroots.
What have you found within that year of observing people and how that extra money, how the extra income has helped with some of their issues, and probably more importantly, have you addressed how the ending of this program for them is going to affect them?
Yeah, okay, so that's two. I'll start with the second one because that's probably a quicker answer. It's a constant thing we're battling with. We don't want to just drop people off of it suddenly and sort of exploitatively and have like a theatrical moment of this is what happens when you suddenly have the rug pulled out from under you. So we're trying to...
that's not what I meant. I mean, but at a point that when, eventually that... UBI will stipend or subsidy or whatever you want to call it, will come to an end. Will there be any type of a follow-up to show that, because obviously there's going to be a change in their
I think what we're going to leave the follow-up to whoever is interested in following up on the stories, because at this point we've decided not to film the end of it. We've actually decided to try to extend their trial beyond when we're filming it. So
that was my question.
We've already extended it 5 months. We're looking for more foundational funding, and then if it's a hit, or we could do like a GoFundMe and say let's get them all UBI until we've all got UBI. But in answer to your first question and the results. We're coming at this as scientifically as possible, and while I may be a believer in UBI personally, we're running it like an experiment, and we're going to share the good and the bad. And so, of course, I'm optimistic about I came in optimistic about how it will go, but also the thing you learn the whole time is that in life, shit happens. It never stops.
Yeah.
And it might be a blur in your memory, but it never stops. So people are going through. We pick tough stories, and people are going through tragic situations. People are going through a lot. And without giving too many spoilers, it's been beyond our expectations how quickly and dramatically a little extra agency and power, through financial power in your life, allows people to proactively address these situations. Like resiliency is through the roof with these people, and creativity and things you never expect that they would do so quickly. It's all with a grain of salt, because ours is only a 2-year trial, and so they know they're only getting it for 2 years, and so they have to get as much done as possible in 2 years. So we can have that debate about what would it mean if it were a lifetime, and you knew you always had it.
But also I think knowing that you have a guarantee of something coming in. It allows you to be more de-stressed than if you're like, oh my god all the time, because you're just trying to make the ends meet.
We asked the question. I mean, I personally wonder if it makes us almost a different species, right? There's a certain group of people in society that get to quote unquote think rich.
Yep.
Which means you can do the things you think are good ideas without thinking is money in the way.
Yeah.
Should I get a set of silverware rather than hoarding plastic forks? Yeah, new headshots and things that are good investments, but a lot of people are not able to do.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to something like all these progressive movements here at Netroots, I like to ask, I mean, what would it mean if every single person fighting in these movements were foundationally secure? How many more people would be at Standing Rock? How much more effective would Medicare for All be if we were, like, poverty drives a lot of disease, so we can treat the disease on the back end, or we can also treat it preventatively.
Homelessness drives a lot of disease because in LA they're now looking at a possible cholera outbreak among the homeless.
Yeah.
Because it's so dire.
So what happens if people can get housed, if they have enough money or whatever the policy is that gets them housed, or if they can feed themselves well, or they can take care of themselves better? How much less illness, less stress, better people being better able to take care of themselves.
Yeah. More stability, the nation will have.
Yeah, and it keeps getting on the advocate side, I keep getting confused where it keeps getting presented as like, even people who are like, okay, UBI sounds like a decent idea to explore, but after we do all these other things we're already working on. But
we're going to pay for it.
Yeah, it seems to me that if we had that's a different question, with which there are answers.
That's how they always say. It's like.
But even of the supporters are like, okay, we should do that later. Like first, but it's like, how much faster could we get everything else? Like, how many people would be at Standing Rock if they were?
Yeah, how many people would be, protesting out in front of the Kremlin Annex?
And everyone in this, like 90% of the people here probably gave to Bernie their $27, right? But how many gave to their local elections? How many gave to local charities and local Kickstarters and projects?
Yeah.
And how much, like, how many people can show up more, both financially and in person, if they're not worried about not being able to feed their kids?
But sometimes, too, that's priorities, like, presidential candidate more important than.
Yeah. But, I mean, we're trying to do these long shots, like, I can give just this much, but then I got to worry about my rent, right?
Yeah.
But if everyone knows they're basically going to be supported to some extent, as long as they keep working, then they can spend. Then they're working for disposable income.
The only string is you have to keep working.
Yeah. But I mean, the theory of a UBI, basic, means it's enough that even if you lost your job for a long time, you could stay off the street. You could pay. You could feed yourself. So some would argue it as like a permanent strike fund for people who need to get out of an abusive work situation, find a new job, or leverage for better pay.
Well, one of the things you can point to is the dividends that Alaskans get.
Yeah, so Alaskans
which is basically for our UBI.
Yeah,
they all get a dividend because of the oil.
The thing is the universality is the best part of the Alaska dividend because it goes to everyone. There are a few things it falls short of on UBI, but it's a good sampling. So you get it once a year. Something about UBI is frequency. That's really important.
Yeah.
Like, you get a lot of people propose once a month. Our trial does it actually once a week. Because I've personally worked in enough jobs where people getting a biweekly check are struggling by the end of the 2 weeks.
Well, I get paid biweekly. I prefer it because it's easier for me to make a budget. Because that's just for me. And living in New York City, weekly pay is designed to keep you broke.
Mm-hmm. But also, if you're right on the edge of paycheck to paycheck and you're not a perfect budgeter, then you might be coming, like, the second half of the second week, you might be like, I can't eat.
Yeah.
Whereas people need chances to learn and explore and grow and make mistakes, right? So if it's monthly and you blow it on whatever, or an emergency comes up and you spend it, then you've got 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Rather than 5 days.
I've been there, so I know it. Yeah. So it is más difícil, So in your weekly in Bootstraps, you say it's weekly. Is it an amount that equals by the end of the month $1,000?
Yeah, it's $231 a week, which on a monthly basis is $1,000 because there's a little more than 4 weeks in a month. And we are different than other proposals out there in that we do give some for kids. It's like part of it's like a child allowance. It's a third of the level, and these are all things that I designed the trial generally after doing extensive research on other trials and other expert opinions, and we had the flexibility to design something we saw as close as possible to like a more of a purist basic income, whereas like the trial in Finland was not a very ambitious thing done by conservatives, and the people who wanted to design the trial were limited by what their government was willing to do.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't have any of those limitations. We were an entirely independent, small company that, found a couple of radical funders and did a Kickstarter, and we're going to design this to show what an actual UBI might look like. And so that was helpful.
I'm trying to think of what else. In the realm of scientific inquiry, you talk a bit more about the design of, maybe you've already discussed this, but more of the design of the project, from how you follow, because I know sometimes being homeless can be a difficult thing to follow somebody who's homeless.
Yeah, the implementation, we learned a lot about and on like what might scale and how we had to do it for ourselves. And there have been other pilots and small independent things too that have kind of botched implementation.
Because this is the other thing with being homeless. If you are on food stamps, for example, and you're homeless, that income can affect how much you get.
Mm-hmm. So there were a few considerations. One was, like, if you're homeless, you don't have an address, it's hard to get a bank account, right?
Yeah.
The first thing we had to do was get everyone a bank account, and we partnered with Amalgamated Bank because they're like a notably ethical bank, and they would do hassle-free, unoverdraftable, zero minimum balance checking accounts for people. So we set everyone up with a debit card, and we had them be nice to us when it came to our homeless individual, and get him a debit card.
And so he's doing direct deposit.
Yeah, everyone. We don't actually send out checks.
It's all direct deposit?
Yeah, it appears in their account every Wednesday, so they don't have to do anything. We wanted to be as non-interfering as possible, including not giving them any other tasks to do.
Yeah.
So that's they have this money every week, and so I think what we've learned from that is, in terms of implementation, having something that comes reliably and it comes electronically, and they don't have to do anything for it. There's no bureaucratic hoops or anything, other than getting them signed up at the beginning, is really important in any implementation of basic income. I think it would give us nationally. It makes me think that the way you do it is with some sort of federal bank or postal banking, but just get everyone an account, which is already in itself a worthwhile thing to do. Get everyone banked, and then you have a place where everyone can get. They could get their tax returns. They could do whatever.
Yeah.
And you could, if they're owed UBI, you drop it in there. If we ever get anywhere on the specific targeted reparations talk, that's a place to put that money. It's a place to give everyone a safe. It's like a utility.
Yeah.
A place to hold your cash.
The only, preferably someplace that will not nickel and dime your ass every time you use the card.
No, if it's federal, I would say you would set up free ATMs, free services.
Well, no, there's some places where you can get a debit card through Pay Your Bills, but they nickel and dime you.
Yeah.
They charge you to use your own money.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to set up a system, like Amalgamated doesn't do that.
Yeah.
They've got free ATMs all over the country. That's another reason we chose them.
But there's a place where you can go cash your check. You need a debit card, you can get one here, and they charge you to use your card.
Yeah.
So
That's awful.
So that's one of the things I think that would have to be looked at, is that,
That's what happens when it becomes commercialized, right? But if it's a utility and if it's a human right, if we define access to some sort of banking as a human right, then it should not be commercialized. It should be subsidized to the level that everyone just has enough access. So you don't want people choosing between what's important.
Yeah. Yeah. When is the release of the first segment of what you going to happen?
Our aim, and we're right now starting some editing and putting together demos and a pilot, and to begin the distribution talk. So we're looking for distributors. We're looking for more funding and stuff for the edit, and our timeline from 3 years ago when we started this was to release in concert with the election cycle, when the people would be looking for answers and looking for discussion, when people would be, not after our next president is elected. But
so this is right in line with
January 2020 is our hope for season 1, which would cover the first year before the primaries, and then season 2, we hope late summer, early fall 2020. So it's before the general.
And people who want more information on the project, how can they get that? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
So a few ways. Anywhere on social media, it's at Bootstraps Film. And our website is bootstrapsfilm.com. There's a lot of information that's not on there because a lot of our stuff is private. We're keeping the anonymity of our people and everything.
Yeah, well, of course.
But you can get on the newsletter there. We do a newsletter once every maybe month or so with UBI news and news on the project, and you can follow along there. You can reach out to us at bootstrapsfilm@gmail.com. And this information is all on the website.
Okay. Because I just want to make sure that people knew how to get more information, contact you. If there is a way to is there a way for the general public to support the funding of the post-production process?
Yeah, on the website there's a donate button, and then
PayPal, Bitcoin.
And for anyone who's I think it's not Bitcoin. But
no cryptocurrency? Wow.
I think we've got it's through our fiscal sponsor, which is 501c3. So
okay.
The project is also open to larger donations and investments. On either donations can go tax deductible 501c3 through our fiscal sponsor on the production end, and we can also take investments.
Sounds good. I want to say thank you for sitting down with me, Conrad, and I've been speaking with Conrad Shaw, producer of Bootstraps, a UBI docuseries, production of Pale Blue Dot Media, and you've been listening to Netroots Nation 2019 live here at Netroots Radio, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Conrad. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I'm on